we've been talking about the 5 powers or the 5 forces. Does everybody remember what they are? Power of motivation, power of the white seed, which is like virtuous activity and merit. Power of destruction, destroying like our self-centered thoughts and excessive self-concern and things like that. Power of aspiration, prayers of aspiration or aspirational prayers. And today we're on the 5th one, the power of acquaintance or familiarity. Very good. Okay, so this one is interesting to me. These teachings I took from when Venerable taught on mind training, like Rays of the Sun. So the verse says, we should familiarize ourselves at all times and in all circumstances solely with the actual meditations as they were explained above. So the idea here being that we want to try to apply the teachings of the Dharma at all times, which that in itself just seems kind of insurmountable in a way, because our minds we're not that controlled yet, but we aspire to this. And this teaching, I think, is especially kind of helpful because if you look at what your mind does and why you don't do this, this is how this teaching is trying to help us. And I remember Venerable pointed this out years ago, and I did think about this because she said, well, when people break up or they change jobs or this or that, sometimes they fall away from the Dharma. So certain kind of changes happen. Or we might have internal states, like we practice when we're kind of feeling crappy, but we don't practice when we feel good. And then we just kind of space out, but the problem is the good times change, so then you're kind of stuck. So you have to, I think, look in your own mind and see when is it that you have difficulty practicing and when is it that you're not familiar and having a hard time with it. So what our hope is that we can practice at all times. For myself, when I moved here, I remember distinctly learning that when I was joyous, I was pretty much spaced out, even to the point of not really attending to others, my impact on others very well. So that was a time when I wasn't very aware of, So I think one thing that's great about, like now we're about ready to enter retreat, is that you can start to see your mind more clearly. And you can actually, if you apply the Dharma, you can look at these things and see when are the times when you'll find as you watch yourself that there are certain times where you consistently have trouble with actually putting the practice into gear. So being able to see it is the first step. And then knowing the advantages of being very familiar with the Dharma and being able to put it in to practice more, is our minds will be more steady and our practice will be more steady. And Venerable Chodron had said in this regard for her own self, she said, this is the value of the practices I have committed to my teacher to do daily. I may not always do it so well, but I'm doing it. And the force of doing it definitely has an impact on my mind. So that's helpful for us to consider, because we don't always feel like what we're doing is so, some days are better than others on the cushion or even off the cushion, and we can get discouraged, I think, just at maybe not being able to take a long enough view about our progress. And then the verse goes on that if we familiarize ourselves with this practice and maintain the conditions for doing so, we will gain perfect awakening. As the saying goes, there's nothing that does not become easier with acquaintance. So what I was thinking about this is that I remember when we were learning the mind training, I had some difficulty with it. And one of them had to do a little bit with this, like, why do we always have to convince ourselves of these things? Why do we always have to bring up, like, oh, I have this precious human life, and oh, this, and oh, that. If it's so true, then why do I have to keep doing this? This is how my mind was thinking about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was like, why do we have to keep doing this if this is the case? And then as you start to see your mind, you see, well, why is it the case? Because just of our habits, we are familiar with thinking in different ways. And when our mind is clear, we can actually look right into those thoughts and see how even illogical they are. And we don't actually believe them. But when we're under the influence of afflictions, or, we're not yeah, really, or maybe doubts come up or whatever, then the mind can go all kinds of directions with this. And so for me, it was helpful for me to answer that question to myself, like, if this is so true, then why do I have to keep telling myself this? And then the answer was, well, just look at the way you're thinking, you know? And so, this is, you'll work out your own, you'll have your own little things that come up for you. That's just one that I remember specifically around this verse that made me think of that, because so, Geshe Nawang Darwe, I think he was maybe talking to Venerable Chodron on this one. She said, if you have the Buddha nature and become a Buddha, you can learn Tibetan. I think maybe he's something that he might have said to you at one time. Yeah, because that was something that, that you might have been feeling discouraged about. And the point was, we have the Buddha nature. Don't put limits on our abilities. And then at the same time, we have to be realistic. And so, for me, the teachings that explain like how we, at what level you're going to get rid of anger. Well, that's a ways down the path. So let's be realistic and not discourage ourselves by being unrealistic. But at the same time, keep familiarizing ourselves, because it's true. And this is this one verse that's so great. Geshe Chakawa said that this mind that is full of faults has one great quality. It does whatever it is taught. So, and we know that. We're creatures of habit. So this power of familiarity is just this. We're creatures of habit. So let's put in our mind wholesome thoughts and dispel all the things that undermine that as we go along. Okay, thank you.